everyone, this is Karen.
Welcome everybody, I'm Shane.
Today we're looking at part 1 of putting pen to paper.
The history of ballpoint pens.
And the vocabulary words are invention.
Invention.
The telephone is one of the most important inventions of all time.
I agree. Leak.
Leak.
Air is leaking out of the tire, and I don't know what to do about it.
Familiar.
Familiar.
Food delivery drivers are a familiar sight on the streets of most big cities.
Inconvenience.
Inconvenience.
My computer crashed this morning, which is a major inconvenience for me.
Transfer.
Transfer.
I transferred the money into your bank account.
Thank you. Inspiration.
Inspiration.
The artist says he gets his inspiration from his daily life.
So we're talking about ballpoint pens?
Ballpoint pens, yes. Because they have a ball, right?
That's right.
It's kind of like the key. So the guy's
What
name...
a great invention, by the way.
The guy who invented it is Laszlo Biro?
Biro, that's right.
Biro, yeah. So before that, they would use fountain pens.
But I like fountain pens, though.
Well, they're very cool.
Yes, they're very cool.
And they're kind of retro. Right? But
have you ever used one?
I have used it, but they're not that easy to use.
And I have to say the inconvenience is that you have to refill the ink all the time.
Right.
And sometimes it would, probably smudge writing. So it's not exactly that convenient, but it just feels really cool because no one really uses it anymore.
Right, but the reason they wanted to change this type of writing instrument to another one was because of the inconveniences.
That's right.
So the way the ballpoint pen works is that the ink is kind of like inside a little tube, and when the ball is pushed down, it gets the little ball wet with the ink.
That's right.
And it's a constant supply of ink.
And it doesn't really smudge.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool where he got his idea from, because one time I remember he saw some kids playing with the marble and it went through the puddle and he saw like a line, of muddy water. He's like, hey, maybe I can turn that into a ballpoint pen.
That's super interesting. Okay, let's learn more about the ballpoint pen.
All right, enjoy.
Putting pen to paper. The history of ballpoint pens. Ballpoint pens may not seem like anything special, but they've made our lives more convenient than you might realize. The story behind their invention may also surprise you.
Today's lesson is called Putting Pen to Paper. The history of ballpoint pens. Part 1. Hello everyone, my name is Jeff.
And I'm Mike. Now if you look around you right now, look at the desk, and maybe you're sitting at school or at home, you'll probably see a nice little pen lying around on a table in a drawer, maybe in your pocket, and there's a good chance that will be a ballpoint pen. They're cheap, they're convenient, you always got one around. If you're like me, there's a drawer at home full of old ballpoint pens. So we use these things all the time, but we never really think about them.
But you're old enough, do you remember when you had to go to school and write on a slate with a piece of chalk?
No.
Do you remember not having ballpoint pens?
No, I don't remember not having ballpoint pens.
Good. Anyways, ballpoint pens are definitely an improvement on that.
They are,
now,
yeah. And very convenient.
Ballpoint pens may not seem like anything special, but they've made our lives more convenient than you might realize. Yes, ballpoint pens are really super cool. And you know what? They've got a super cool story, too.
Wonderful. Yeah, the story behind their invention may also surprise you. So, how they came to be, where they came from, who created them or invented them, all of this will probably be unknown to you and will also, when we tell you, surprise you.
By the way, invent, that's the verb. When you invent something, you create something that never existed before, okay? Now, what you create, what you invent, that's your invention. For example, the telephone is one of the most important inventions of all time. which is true. All right, folks, with that, it's time for us to take a short break, but don't go away. We will be back after this.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。同学们的手边啊，或是书桌上应该都有原子笔吧？这个东西很普通，没有什么特别。不过，其实原子笔的出现让我们的生活方便许多。那这2天的课文就是来介绍原子笔的历史，看看它是怎么被发明出来的。好 ，invent 这个动词就表示发明，那文中是用到它的名词 invention，invention 表示发明或是发明物。那如果在 invent 后面加 or 变成 inventor， 那就是发明家。好，那么看到标题里面用到 ballpoint pen， 就是指原子笔。好，那Jeff老师刚刚提到一个很古老的东西，叫做 slate，S-L-A-T-E。slate 这个字呢，可以指石板，也可以指这个早期学生用来书写的那种板子石板。那么以前他们学生可能会用粉笔在这种石板上面写字。好，接回到课文中。
Putting pen to paper. The history of ballpoint pens. Laszlo Biro, a Hungarian journalist, is said to have invented the ballpoint pen in 1938. Before the ballpoint pen, people used fountain pens. These old-fashioned pens had to be refilled often, and they leaked and smudged easily. Since Biro spent much of his day writing, he was all too familiar with these inconveniences.
Okay, the history of the ballpoint pen takes us to Hungary. Hungary. It's a country. I'm not actually hungry. Anyways, Laszlo Biro, a Hungarian journalist, a journalist from Hungary, the country of Hungary, is said to have invented the ballpoint pen in 1938.
All right, so not that long ago. So what were people using before the ballpoint pen came along?
Like a feather, a quill
thing?
Well,
they did use that, but after that they had another more modern pen. Before the ballpoint pen, people used fountain pens. These are the ones with that metal tip and liquid ink that you have to fill quite frequently. They spill places, they can be a little bit inconvenient, but they were better than the feather. They were better than hammering words into stone. But fountain pens, yeah, most people had those. They cost a bit more. You had to be more careful with them. And as we read, these old-fashioned pens had to be refilled often, and they leaked and smudged easily. So yes, these old fountain pens, they would sometimes leak. They wouldn't explode shooting ink all over the place. No, but it would come out of them slowly, maybe in your pocket or on the paper you're writing on, because a leak is a very small amount or a small thing that's escaping, all right? We're not talking about a huge amount. We're talking a small amount through probably a small hole. For example, if you're riding your bicycle and you have a small leak, that means the air is coming out of your tire very slowly. As it says in our example sentence, air is leaking out of the tire and I don't know what to do. Well, you can patch it, cover up that little hole and stop that leak, or if it's leaking slowly, maybe ride to a bike repair shop and buy a new tire. But you might be able to ride for a little while longer because it's a leak. It's just coming out slowly.
Since Biro spent much of his day writing, he was all too familiar with these inconveniences. Those old-fashioned pens were pains, and he knew all about these pains. By the way, if you are familiar with something, you know all about that thing. Okay, if you're familiar with someone, you know that person pretty well. If you're unfamiliar with them, not so well. For example, food delivery drivers are a familiar sight on the streets of most big cities. Okay, and also, What's an inconvenience, Mike?
An inconvenience is a small but kind of annoying problem. It's not a major problem that's going to totally change your life in a bad way, but it's one of those things that makes you go, like that. And then you'll move on and you'll find a way to fix it. If you need to get money out of the bank and you go to your local ATM machine and it doesn't work for some reason, well, that's an inconvenience. You'll just have to walk down to the next bank and find one. But if the whole banking computer system breaks down and you can't get any money out for 24 hours, that could be more than an inconvenience. That could be a problem, especially if you really need money at that time. But a small problem that just makes your life a little more difficult, but it's a problem you can easily work your way around eventually, that would be an inconvenience. My computer crashed this morning, which is a major inconvenience for me. Yeah, it'll work tonight, but my boss or my teacher's waiting for an important report. Now I'll have to call them and explain why and say sorry, but eventually the computer will work.
Thank goodness for that.
There you go.
Anyways, folks, with that, it's time for us to take a short break. But don't go away. We'll be right back.
Well, that's an inconvenience.
那么原子笔是谁发明出来的呢？据说啊，有一位匈牙利新闻记者叫做 Laszlo Biro 拉斯洛比罗。那他在1938年发明了原子笔。好，补充一下 ，Hungarian 它可以用来形容是匈牙利的，也可以当名词来指匈牙利人。那匈牙利这个国家则是念作 Hungary， 听起来就很像肚子的那个 hungry， 对不对？好，那这边还有一个重点哦，就是句型某人或某事物 be said to 加原形动词，就是用来表达据说某人或某事物怎么样怎么样。那如果这个据说的事情啊是发生在过去，这里的不定词我们就要改成不定词完成式，也就是 to have 加上过去分词 pp。好，我们来看两个例句比较清楚。第一个例句 ，The house is said to have several secret passageways。据说啊，那间房子有几条秘密通道。好，那这边后面我们就是用 to have to 加原形动词。那么第二个例句 ，The song is said to have been inspired by a painting。据说那首歌的灵感是来自一幅画。好，那么这首歌这个灵感受到启发的动作是发生在过去，比我们主要动词据说这个动词更早发生，所以是用不定词完成式，用 to have been。好，那么课文接着写到说，在有原子笔之前，人们用的是钢笔。那这种旧式的笔呢，常常要补充墨水，而且很容易漏墨啊，还会弄脏。那么 Biro 他自己是新闻记者，他每天要花很多时间来写作，所以他对这些种种的不方便实在太熟悉了。好，这边有3个单字 leak 这个动词可以用来表达渗漏、泄漏，像是漏气啊、漏水之类的。好，那么单字例句提到轮胎的气正在漏。Mike 老师就建议说，可以去补胎，或是你就把车慢慢骑去维修行。好，这时候老师用到一个动词叫做 patch，P-A-T-C-H，patch 表示修补，那它也可以当名词来表达补丁或是补片。下一个单字 familiar， 它是形容词，形容熟悉的。我们说 be familiar with something 就是对什么什么很熟悉。再来看 inconvenience，其中这个 convenience 是便利嘛，前面加上否定字首 in 就会变成不便或是不便的事 inconvenience。好，另外文中的 fountain pen 就是指钢笔，那老师们有提到 quill 这种，这是指鹅毛笔、羽毛笔，它是拼作 Q-U-I-L-L quill。好，接着回到课文中。
Putting pen to paper. The history of ballpoint pens. Many inventors had tried to design similar types of pens before Biro, but none had succeeded. Biro's ballpoint pen design used a small ball instead of a nib. When the ball is pressed onto paper, it rolls to pick up ink inside the pen and transfer it onto paper. The inspiration for this design came from an unexpected source. One day, Biro happened to see children playing with marbles. A boy rolled a marble through a puddle, creating a line of water on the street and giving Biro the idea for the ballpoint design. However, the real breakthrough came when Biro got help from his brother, who was a scientist. He developed a thick, fast-drying ink for Biro's pen.
Wow, what an inventor this Biro guy was. And I'm being serious, get this. Many inventors had tried to design similar types of pens before Biro, but none, not a one, had succeeded. Biro's ballpoint pen design used a small ball instead of a nib.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, fountain pens used a nib that would basically channel ink right down to the end, and that's what you would write with. But Biro used a ball that kind of spread the ink as you moved it over the page. Or as we read, when the ball is pressed onto paper, it rolls to pick up ink inside the pen and transfer it onto the paper. Think about if there's, paint or water on the ground and a car rolls through it, it carries that water or paint in a straight line. It transfers that water or paint down the road in a line.
There you go. It goes from one place to another. It's being transferred. Now, very often, well, at least when I was growing up, you would call someplace like an office or something like that, and you would be transferred between departments, let's say on the telephone. So no one would be hanging up on you, okay? The phone call wouldn't end. They would just be transferring you from one person to another until you got to the right person. Okay, so you're trying to make contact with the right person. You're trying to get transferred to the right person. But here the idea is a little bit simpler. There is ink inside of the pen, and you want that ink onto the paper. So you go ahead and you press down using that ballpoint pen, and you're able to transfer that ink onto the paper. How simple is that? For example, I transferred the money into your bank account. By the way, yes, in these situations, you would say transfer and not transport, okay? Transfer is the word of choice here. Anyways, the inspiration for this design came from an unexpected source. So there you go. Everybody else was stuck with this nib idea. But hey, this Biro guy, he got some inspiration from an unexpected place.
Oh, where you might not think that he would get an idea for a new type of pen. And that's what inspiration is. It's an idea for something new. Inventors need inspiration. They see something in the world that needs to be fixed and there's not a machine for it, and then they think and suddenly, like a flash of light, it comes to them. I know what I'm going to do. So an inventor might need inspiration for some new machine or new technology. Artists also will get inspiration for a new painting or a new song or a new story idea. No one's done it before. They're just walking around or sitting around or washing the dishes when suddenly a new melody, a new bit of music pops into their head, or a new idea for a painting or a sculpture or whatever. Something new and creative is born in an instant. That is inspiration, or what you see gives you that inspiration, that magic creative spark. For example, the artist says he gets his inspiration from his daily life.
Okay,
inspiration.
That could happen, but hey, with Biro, it did happen.
Okay, what was the inspiration for his pen?
It came from everyday life. One day, Biro happened to see children playing with marbles.
Oh, those little glass balls that kids...
Nothing special.
Played with?
Now, a boy rolled a marble through a puddle, creating a line of water on the street and giving Biro the idea for the ballpoint design.
Oh, so the ball went through this puddle, this small amount of water, rolled down probably a dry street and made a nice dark line of water. There you go. I'll just do the same thing with a pen and some ink. However, the real breakthrough, so that was the inspiration, but the real breakthrough came when Biro got help from his brother, who was a scientist, because of course you need the right kind of ink. And his brother says he developed a thick, fast drying ink for Biro's pen. Yeah, it had to be thick because the other type of ink from the fountain pen would just leak out. But also you want it to be fast drying because one of the problems with fountain pens is that you often would spread that ink with your hand, and that's what would make it so messy. So thick, it stays in the pen. Fast drying, when it hits the paper, it dries quickly, no mess.
There you go.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Okay, folks, that's it for today's lesson, and it's time for us to say bye-bye.
Take care of your ballpoint pens.
Biro 的原子笔设计不是用钢笔的笔尖，而是用一颗小圆珠。当这个珠子被推挤到纸上呢，它就会滚动，然后接收笔身里面的墨水，再转印到纸上。好，那他这个设计灵感其实呢是来自有一天呢，他就刚好看到孩子们在玩弹珠，有一个男孩他把弹珠滚过一滩水坑，然后就在街道上面留下一条水痕。Biro 的设计点子就是从这边来的哦。不过真正的突破呢，是要等到 Biro 的兄弟帮他的笔开发出一种粘稠又快干的墨水。好，那我们先来看两个单字 ，transfer。Transfer 可以用来表达转印、转移、转让。这个动词也可以表达像转账或是电话转接，反正就有那种转的意思嘛。好，再来看 inspiration。inspiration 它是指灵感，那它的动词是 inspire。inspire 表示启发或是给予灵感。好，另外补充一下 ，Mike 老师刚刚聊到说，钢笔呢是利用笔尖把它的墨水引出来。这时候老师用到 channel 这个字来当动词 ，channel 我们知道是频道嘛，那它当动词其实可以用来表达把什么导入、导向或是倾注的意思。好，那么最后来看一个重点哦，是 instead of 跟 instead 的比较。Instead of 它是介系词，后面是要接被取代的名词或动名词来表达代替什么，而不是什么。那么 instead 是副词，它是用来表达作为代替或是反之或是相反的。好，那我们来看一组例句。Kate ordered tea instead of coffee. Kate 点了茶而不是咖啡。好，那再看一个例句。Kate didn't order coffee. She ordered tea instead.Kate 没有点咖啡，她反而点了茶来作为代替。好，那么以上是今天的讲解，同学们别走开，马上回来哦。
Hunters in the Australian outback use a tool called a boomerang to go on a hunt with Aboriginal bushmen. When you throw it the right way, it flies back to you.That way, you don't have to go find it over and over again. The bent shape makes it fly in a curved direction. Boomerangs have also been used as weapons for tens of thousands of years. Most people think of Australia when they see a boomerang, and they are popular souvenirs for tourists who visit the land down under. But actually, the oldest boomerang was found in a cave in Poland.It was dated back to about 20,000 years ago. There are a few designs of boomerangs that fly in different ways. Some don't fly back in a curve, but they can be thrown faster and fly further distances. You have to hold it vertically and throw it at a 10 to 20 degree angle when you release it.
Here is more information.
Bent.I sat on my glasses, so now they are bent. Club. The golf player uses the club to hit the ball. Curved. You must drive slowly on the curved road. Ellipse. The Earth goes around the sun in an ellipse. Origin. Germany is the origin of hamburgers. Axis. The planet spins on its axis. Soar. The bird soars high in the sky. Thrower. The thrower of the ball broke the window. Weapon. They are testing a new weapon. Wooden. The wooden house is very old. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Hope to see you again soon.
See you next time!